It happened, and it's difficult to understate the significance of this moment both for the state and nationally. Within 24 hours, a revenue package passed, was vetoed, and the veto was overridden, dismantling the governor's Kansas tax experiment. Let's look at what this means for you and the state. A third income bracket was added, returning it to the 3 brackets before the experiment. The rates will partially increase this tax year and take full effect beginning January. Taxes are going up, but they're only reducing the 2012 tax breaks by about half. There are some big changes to deductions to help working class families. The deductions will be phased in over a series of years. The most significant is the return of medical expense deductions and the child care tax credit. Although tax rates will only return to about half of what they were before the experiment, the 2 most critical parts of policy were dismantled, which is the LLC loophole, which exempted over 330,000 businesses from paying tax, which is now gone, and the glide path to zero, which would make all new revenue immediately go into income tax breaks. The law is expected to raise about $591 million for fiscal year 2018. This will cover the structural deficit, but the real deficit is much higher. The state will deplete the long-term investment fund and still rely on taking hundreds of millions of dollars from the highway fund. We'll know more about this once a budget is passed and the Supreme Court school funding case is settled. It takes a 2/3 majority to override the governor. In the House, Speaker Reichman broke ranks with the far right to offer his leadership and pull conservative votes. It's shocking this made it through the Senate, and that's thanks to Majority Leader Senator Denning, Senator Estes, and Senator Wilborn breaking with the far right to get to the magic number 27. Notably, Senate President Susan Wagle decided not to vote for this, permanently binding her legacy to the governor and the tax experiment. There were many different versions of the tax bill that made it to various steps of the legislative process. How we got to this final point of a bill that could override the veto was a mix of the pressure from the end of session being 19 days over time, the Democrats holding out their votes for a better plan, moderate Republicans' willingness to stay at the table, and a stellar performance by a last-minute group of bipartisan women that formed a women's caucus and wrote their own version of the bill that negotiated with the conference. Although it's hard to understate how important this moment is, it's also hard to understate how much farther the state has to go. This was a critical step in dismantling some structural problems to keep the state from being financially stable. But we'll still be running a yearly deficit, and the state is still nearly $20 billion in debt on top of $20 billion in local debt. There's a long way to go, but a big thing just happened in Kansas.